For full immersion, I recommend using headphones. The door slammed shut behind my partner with a heavy metallic clang, leaving me in the silence of the spacious store. I had come out for the night shift for the first time, completely alone in a large electronics store, where the only things keeping me company were refrigerators and toasters. This realization gave me an unpleasant sinking feeling in my stomach. No, working as a security guard wasn't my dream, but the pay was on time, and I didn't have much of a choice. After graduation, as a young specialist with no work experience, no one wanted to hire me. The classic story. But you have to eat. Plus, I didn't have wealthy parents with an extra apartment or connections. So I went to work as a security guard. The job seemed simple. Just sit in the booth, keep an eye on the cameras, and occasionally patrol the floor. If you hear Vitalik, don't be scared, my partner tossed at me with a chuckle right before leaving. I didn't understand what he meant back then, and I didn't bother to ask. Just some local humor, I figured. Though, to be honest, that smirk of his, for some reason, made me a lot more anxious than I wanted to admit to myself. Left completely alone, I looked around. The store was beautiful, one of the best in the city, as they had told me during the interview. But now, at night, everything looked different. The glossy display cases reflected the pale light of the emergency lamps. Long rows of shelves filled with electronics stretched into the distance, getting lost in the gloom and making my imagination paint some very unsettling pictures. The ceiling was high and curved, like the dome of a cathedral. It hummed softly and monotonously. The sound of the ventilation seemed way too loud in the night silence. I yawned, made myself a strong coffee, and sat down in front of the monitor, lazily switching through the cameras. The screen showed the exact same thing. Motionless racks, quiet aisles. The anxiety began to fade. A couple of hours later, I was already thinking, why am I, a grown man, getting so jumpy? Suddenly, from somewhere down below, a sound echoed. Not loud, but distinct, resembling a thud against a wall. I instantly tensed up, shaking off the drowsiness. I straightened up and stared into the screen. The cameras on the first floor showed that everything was in perfect order in the aisles. Everything was in place. In the warehouse, everything was quiet too. Long rows of boxes and pallets stood in perfect lines, with absolutely no movement. I hesitated for a second or two, but the sense of responsibility for my new job won over. Standing up and grabbing a flashlight, I headed downstairs. Walking down the stairs, I felt how the space around me was changing. Upstairs, there was at least some illusion of comfort, but down here, a chill was drifting, along with the damp smell of cardboard and plastic. I walked cautiously along the walls, listening to my own footsteps, which echoed hollowly through the empty premises. Finally, I stopped at the door leading into the warehouse storage. Everything seemed normal. The rows of boxes stood straight, strictly like soldiers on parade. But my eyes caught one large cardboard box with a TV inside. For some reason, it was sticking out crookedly from the row, as if someone had accidentally bumped into it or carelessly put it back. "Strange," I muttered, stepping closer. Just a minute ago, the cameras clearly showed that the box was standing straight, almost flush against the wall. I reached out, intending to straighten it, and at that exact moment, a dull thud came from behind the wall. I almost jumped out of my skin. My heart pounded painfully against my ribs. I froze, listening. The thud repeated, dull, heavy, as if someone was hitting the concrete from the other side of the wall. But what could be behind it? I vaguely remembered the evacuation plan. There was nothing behind that wall. No room, no other premises. I took a step back. The beam of my flashlight darted across the wall as if hoping to find an answer. Nothing. At that moment, my nerves gave out. Panic surged from somewhere deep in my stomach and choked my throat. I spun around sharply and, barely looking where I was going, rushed back upstairs. The steps buzzed under my feet. My breathing caught. I stumbled, but somehow made it back to the booth and slammed the door behind me, feeling cold, sticky sweat covering my back. Standing in front of the monitors, I tried to calm my racing heart. My hands were shaking, as if I had just run a marathon. There was a sound behind the wall. There could be no mistake. It wasn't my imagination. Not a pipe creaking, not random noise. Someone or something was in there. But how? What could be there when, according to the plan, there was only a solid wall and empty space? Until the very dawn, I sat without taking my eyes off the monitors. But nothing else happened. The store breathed with the night silence, as if nothing had occurred. Only my heart continued to hammer against my ribs, reminding me that what happened was not just a dream. It dawned slowly and reluctantly. When the sunrise finally chased away the night shadows, I heard the front door open. Yesterday's shift worker arrived. Noticing my exhausted look, he just smirked. "Why are you so pale?" he asked, taking off his jacket. "Did you meet Vitalik?" I swallowed and tried to force a smile, but it probably didn't turn out very well. "I don't know about Vitalik," I muttered, but last night someone was banging on the warehouse wall, so hard that one of the boxes flew out of line. My partner gave a short laugh, looked at me with a bit of pity, and shrugged. "Don't sweat it so much, newbie. Well, stuff like this happens here sometimes. The walls hum, the pipes knock. It's an old store. You imagine things. And the box was probably already like that. One of the loaders put it back crookedly. It happens. We even joke about it ourselves, like the ghost of the security guard Vitalik lives here. He used to work here, then, well, doesn't matter. Anyway, don't overthink it." I nodded, trying to look convinced, but I couldn't calm down. I walked home, painfully dwelling on the previous night. During the day, under the bright sun, the night terrors seemed childish and silly. But for some reason, the thought of the next night shift caused heavy anxiety. By the evening of the next day, I forced myself to come to the store again. I didn't want to quit the job after the very first strange night. It felt wrong and cowardly. I firmly decided, if nothing happens tonight, it means I was just overworked and everything is fine. At first, everything was quiet. I even started to calm down, feeling the cold, sticky knot of anxiety slowly dissolve in my chest. I drank coffee, took a walk around the floor. A regular evening, regular emptiness and silence. Only the dim flicker of the emergency lights played on the smooth surfaces of the display cases, casting shifting shadows on the walls like thin tentacles crawling upward. I slowly returned to the post, listening to the dull rustle of the ventilation and the quiet crackling that always appears in old buildings when the night takes over. And suddenly, right behind my back, the elevator buzzed deafeningly. The sound was so out of place and alien that my whole body flinched. I turned around, listening in surprise. There was no one in the store. All entrances were locked. The alarm was activated. But the elevator was moving slowly, all by itself. The numbers on the display above the door slowly lit up and went out, reflecting in the mirror surfaces of the display cases. The elevator was riding up from the basement level, straight towards me. My stomach churned unpleasantly, and a metallic taste of fear appeared in my mouth. I sharply darted toward a row of washing machines, hid behind the nearest one, and crouched down, listening to the humming of the elevator, quiet and indifferent, like the breath of something living and ancient, hidden in the depths of the building. Maybe some kind of technical glitch, I thought, and immediately after, I heard something else. A human groan, low and mournful. My heart skipped a beat again. Panic began to wash over me in waves, intensifying with every turn of the elevator mechanism. Someone was in the elevator. A person. I started shaking with fear even harder. Finally, the elevator stopped. I heard the doors open, and nothing. I cautiously peeked out. There was no one in the cabin. Only the light bulb inside was blinking anxiously, casting strange reflections on the walls and floor. I carefully crept out of my hiding place and looked around, expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows. But around me, there was only emptiness. Just me, alone among the flickering display cases, among the shadows that seemed to grow deeper and heavier with every minute. Returning to the post, I could no longer relax. My hands were shaking slightly. My breathing was uneven. I tried to look at the monitors, reassuring myself that it was an equipment malfunction, a mere coincidence. But then, one of the cameras, the one aimed at the TV aisle, showed movement. A shadow flickered across the screen, fast, light, barely discernible. I stared intently, trying to make out what exactly was happening there. Nothing clear, just a brief stirring of the gloom, as if the shadow of a person slipped past the display case and dissolved around its corner. I took the flashlight, took a deep breath, feeling panic waking up in my chest again, and slowly went to check. Walking down into the aisle, I noticed how the flashlight was jumping nervously in my hand, like a searchlight in a storm. Entering the aisle, I froze in my tracks. For a second, it seemed to me that somewhere deep in the aisle, behind the glass of the display cases, someone was watching me, lurking in anticipation. And suddenly, the TVs came alive on their own, one after another, as if by someone's invisible command. White noise instantly filled the aisle with hissing and crackling, a low, monotonous hum tearing the silence to shreds. Interference darted across the screens like distorted faces and figures trying to break out. And then I clearly heard a voice, weak, raspy, pleading, barely discernible through the noise and crackle of the static. "Let me out." I rushed to the nearest TV, frantically pressing the power button, feeling my fingers shaking with fear and helplessness. But it continued to hiss, the static flickering across the screen, mockingly distorting my reflection. The other TVs didn't react to the presses either, as if they had gone out of control. In despair, I ran back to the post and shut off the electricity, feeling the bile rising in my throat. An instant, deafening darkness arrived. Only the flashlight trembled in my hand, a weak, dim spot of light, almost powerless against this ocean of gloom. I stood in the middle of the dark, dead store, realizing that dawn was still very far away. My heart was beating wildly, refusing to calm down. I tried to convince myself that nothing terrible had happened, just, I don't know, interference in the equipment or a very bad joke by the shift workers. But the voice that hissed from the TVs was still ringing in my ears, continuing to quietly repeat its grim demand. "Let me out." No, that's it. I've had enough of this circus, I thought, listening to the darkness around me, trying not to flinch at how the old office chair creaked under my weight. I would sit it out until morning, and then to hell with this job, this store, and all its fucking creepiness. I sat staring into the gloom that was slowly thickening around me, feeling the night darkness slowly closing in, getting closer and closer. Suddenly, a distinct sound came from below, even a crash, as if something heavy had fallen down there. I instantly jumped to my feet, feeling cold, viscous fear sliding down my back again. The sound repeated with such force that the entire floor seemed to vibrate. I instinctively looked at the monitor, but it was turned off. Of course, I had cut the electricity myself. My heart beat even faster. I had to gather my courage and go check again. If there were thieves down there and I just sat upstairs, I wouldn't be able to prove anything later. Clutching the flashlight in my hand, I slowly walked down the stairs, listening to how every step echoed in the complete silence. The darkness below was almost tangible. It felt like it was enveloping me in a thick, damp blanket. When I reached the warehouse premises, the flashlight beam caught an unexpected sight. The boxes that had recently stood in a smooth, flawless wall were now scattered everywhere, pushed aside and thrown around as if someone huge and angry had flung them in a fit of rage. And suddenly, a thud. The wall in front of me literally shuddered, and from this vibration, the boxes shifted slightly. I broke into a cold sweat. How was this possible? There shouldn't be any rooms behind that wall. But the blows continued, methodical and strong, as if someone was desperately trying to break out. I slowly walked closer, feeling the boxes, trying to somehow ease the sticky horror gripping my chest. I started moving them, hesitantly at first, then faster, until I discovered something that sent a cold wave down my spine. Behind the clutter, a door was hidden. A regular metallic door with peeling paint, behind which I was certain there should be nothing but a concrete wall. But it was here, absolutely real. And it was from right behind it that the dull thuds were coming. I took a step back, and at that exact moment, a voice came from behind the door. "Let me out. I don't want to be alone." That voice made me flush with heat. There was a person in there, a locked-up person. Forgetting my fear, I rushed to the door, frantically pulling out a bunch of keys. My hands were shaking. The keys jingled, and like a madman, I shoved them into the keyhole one by one, trying to find the right one. "Just a moment! Just a moment! Wait!" I shouted in a trembling voice. Finally, the lock gave way with a soft click. The door swung inward with a nasty metallic creak, revealing an old security room, almost identical to mine upstairs, but clearly abandoned many years ago. Dusty monitors covered in grime, a control panel, and a chair. A stale, suffocating smell of dampness hung in the air. There was no one inside, not a soul, no movement. Even the air seemed motionless and dead. I stood on the threshold of this room, trying to comprehend what had just happened. Where did the voice disappear to, and who on earth was banging so desperately from the inside, begging to be let out? The room was empty, as if no one had ever been there. My heart echoed hollowly in my chest, trying to leap out. I stood on the threshold of this cursed room, trying to process what was happening. The flashlight beam darted nervously across the old monitors and the dusty control panel. The silence around was so thick and tangible that it felt almost alive. A thought hammered persistently in my head. This is impossible. A minute ago, someone was here. Someone was calling out, banging on the door, screaming from despair and loneliness. And now, nothing. Just a frozen, abandoned room. Suddenly, the flashlight beam caught some writing on the wall. "I don't want to be alone." There were fingerprint marks next to it, and the writing itself looked as if it was done in blood. Forcing myself to turn around with great effort, I stepped out of the room and gently closed the door, as if afraid to wake something that might still be hiding in the dark. I walked back upstairs slowly. The steps under my feet felt viscous, as if I was walking through a swamp. The sensation of someone's gaze burned the back of my neck, and even when I locked myself in at the post, it didn't disappear, as if someone was watching me from the dark corners. I sat out the rest of the night, clutching the flashlight, which kept dying due to a weak battery. With every minute, the tension eased slightly, but the realization of what had happened gave me no peace. A strange door, an invisible guest, and that creepy voice repeating, "Let me out." Morning arrived reluctantly, foggy and gray, as if the sky itself was afraid to chase the night away. I heard the lock of the front door click downstairs. I felt a sense of relief, albeit a faint one. A shift worker came in, but it wasn't yesterday's guy. It was an elderly guard whom I had seen only once during my hiring process. A man in his 50s, grayish, with attentive and slightly tired eyes. Everyone here called him just Semyonich. He immediately noticed my state and nodded silently, as if not surprised. "Rough night, huh?" he asked calmly, as if it was something ordinary. "I'm never coming back here. This place is not normal." I hesitated, the words tangling, refusing to form a coherent story. "Anyway, something is going on here. Something bad. I didn't just hear sounds. There were voices, and a door downstairs, and there's no one behind it, though someone was definitely there. I heard it." He looked at me intently, examining me seriously, and then softly said, "So you let him out?" I flinched, feeling a chill run down my spine. Who did I let out?" The guard sighed wearily, passed his hand over his face as if deciding whether it was worth continuing, then nodded to himself. "It was a long time ago. About 10 years ago," he began, sitting down on the office chair. "I had just started working here back then. There was this one guard here, a young guy. Strange he was, not of this world. Well, not quite right in the head, you know. A simple, trusting fool, in short." He paused, frowning. "Those who worked here before you liked to play pranks on him. And one day, they took the joke too far. They locked him in the old security room downstairs, like a prank, and went out for lunch themselves. When they returned a couple of hours later and opened the door, they saw bloodstains on the walls. The guy had smashed his head against the concrete, you see, and he wrote on the wall in blood, 'I don't want to be alone.' By the time they opened the door, he was already dead. No one told anyone that he had been locked in there. They blamed it all on his madness, saying the the guy was messed up in the head. His mind snapped, and that was it. The security post was moved upstairs after that. That door was blocked with boxes, and they forgot about it. Or rather, they tried to forget. I remained silent, feeling an icy horror slowly penetrating every corner of my mind, crowding out the last remnants of composure. Not knowing what to answer, I just nodded and stood up, grabbing my jacket. "Yeah," the old man said quietly. "So it's true. You let him out. The brave ones come out, braver than our slackers. All they can do is laugh, but you know they're afraid to stay here at night themselves. They feel something, but they pretend everything is fine. So they joke about the ghost. Heck, even I couldn't listen anymore. My legs carried me outside into the gray, foggy morning. Returning home, I immediately wrote a resignation letter and sent it by mail. I spent the rest of the day in some kind of stupor, trying not to think about the night's events, though the old man's words and the image of the empty room with the horrific writing on the wall kept standing before my eyes. The next morning, I was awakened by a ringtone. It was a call from work. I answered with trepidation. "Hello? Hello?" The voice on the other end of the line sounded nervous and strained. "Listen, I saw the letter, but we have an emergency. Can you cover the shift tonight? It's urgent. Well, basically, a problem happened." "What kind of problem?" I asked hoarsely, feeling my heart start to beat faster again. "It's Semyonich. Trouble. This morning, he was found dead at the post. Apparently, his mind snapped or something like that. He did it to himself. Well, anyway, can you come out tonight?" I remained silent. My hand began to shake, and cold gripped my entire body. Without a word, I slowly moved the phone away from my ear, and saying nothing, hung up. If you like the story, you can support the channel with a like and a subscription. See you next time.